Hello and welcome to my second lesson on C++. So we're going to create a new C++ project and we're gonna save it in our C++ lessons folder, which we've created in the last lesson. And if you don't know how to do this, just watch lesson 1. Everything I explain will be in lesson 1 that I haven't already explained, if that makes sense. Alright, so we'll call this lesson 2 and we'll create it. And now we have our main.cpp. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger and then I'll just focus on that so it's easier to read. Alright, so first thing we need to know, we don't need this, so we'll delete that. And then we know where to put our code, and we're writing our own program, so we don't need their hello world statement. So, and then we're going to say using namespace std. Semicolon. So now that we've created our program, or our program workspace, we can start getting into today's tutorial. Today's tutorial is going to be on variables. So, in the last tutorial, I said you can print things out to the console by saying console out and then saying a string. So I'll say hello, Mr. Console. Alright, and then I'll build that, and then I'll view my console, and it says hello, Mr. Console. Alright, well, first off, why have I been calling this a string? Like a string that's just like a little long thing that there's nothing to do with a string. Well, actually it does. So today we're going to be getting into variables and different variable data types. So a variable, if you've taken algebra, or this word might be familiar to you. Basically, it's something that stores information. So like x equals 5, here's our variable x, and then its value is 5. Well, it's very similar in C++. So there's different data types, and so I'm going to get into it. So the first data type is int. I'm going to make that a new line. Alright, int. And int is an integer, so I'm going to make all the variable names what they are, so that way. So and there's many different data types. I'm just going to get into the main ones that we're going to use for these tutorials. So int is an integer, and I probably spelled that wrong, but I really don't care. So we can say int space integer. So now we have a new variable. We know its data type is an int, and its variable name is an integer. So that's good. We could leave that as that. Or we could specify what integer equals. Like how we said x equals 5. Well, we'll say integer equals 5 as well. Yeah, 5's a nice number. I'll space that out just the way it looks nice. Alright, so we have int space integer equals 5. So here's our data type. Here's our variable name. And here's our variable value. Okay, now I'm going to show you a couple others variable data types. So that's for an integer, and an integer basically means whole number if you didn't know that. So I'll say double and then decimal equals 5.0. Alright, so int stores integers, double stores the decimals. I don't know why they called it double. You're just going to have to memorize that. Double is for decimals. So 5.0 and 5. I couldn't say integer equals 5.0. Alright, so now another popular one is string. This is a different color because it's like, just consider it a variable. So that's what I've been telling you about before. String, as you already know, is text. So I'll say string space text equals, and then as you know, strings go in quotes, and then string space text equals 5. Alright, next we have car, or as I like to call it, char. It stands for character, but when you just write it like that, it looks like it says char, so I call it chars. Don't correct me, I know it's supposed to be called car, or care, but I like to call it char, so that's what I'll call it. So char space and then character. Probably spelled that wrong too. I'm not good with spelling. I'm not going to check that. Alright. Alright, now a character is just a character on the keyboard, and these go in single quotes. So I could say exclamation point, I could say lowercase g, I could say capital G, I could say any number, but just one character. I can't say that. No, that's just incorrect. So just the way we don't get it confused with the integer, I'll make it an exclamation point, and now breaking the pattern. That's okay because I had to break the pattern anyways. So we have int, which is for whole numbers, double, which is decimals, string, which is for text, car, which is or char, well, however you want to call it, which is for one character on the keyboard, any character. And then this is the last one I'm going to be telling you about. Feel free to look up more data types if you want. Bool. And bool, true, false. Now you'll notice that I didn't put a space. That's because variable names, first off, they have to start with a lowercase character, so lowercase t, and then you can't have a space in the name. So usually, if it's more than one word, people just make the second word or the third word, whatever, capital. So that way, uppercase. So that way they can tell the difference. So bool space true false, and then that does exactly what it sounds like. It can either be true or false. So I'll make it false. Semicolon. And then I can run the code. Obviously, it's going to do absolutely nothing, and it'll also give us a bunch of warnings. But these warnings are just that we're not using these variables. So I'm going to show you how they're all used. Well, they're pretty much all used the same way. So, alright, I'll delete bool because we're not even going to get into that today. I just thought I might show you what it is. Bools are like for if statements and things like that, which we'll get into later. So I'll say also another way of declaring it. So now that we know all these, I'll let you take a mental note of that, and I'll just comment this out so that way it doesn't affect our code. So there's two ways to do a comment. You can either say // which comments that line. If you want to comment a lot of lines, you say /*, which will comment everything after that, the /*, until you say */. And so now that chunk of text has been commented out. So another way of declaring variables, if you want to have more than one integer, you can obviously say int a, alright, int b, and then obviously variables are not going to have a value until I give them a value, so I say equal to give it a value, and int c, and you can give a variable a new value at each time. So now 3 variables have been declared, one named a, one named b, and one named c. Nice to know, but that's a waste of space. There's 3 lines there. So a shortcut is int a, comma b, comma c. So I think you noticed the pattern. You just put comma in between, spaces there. You put a comma in between the variable names, and it'll, as you can see, that didn't give us an error. It gave us a warning that we didn't use those 3 variables. So now I think you got a better sense of what variables are and how you can call them, but when are they useful? Well, I'll make a variable called age, so int age, I'll indent this, equals 17, because I am 17 years old. So now I'll print out what I just told you in the console. So console out, or C out, and then I can say, I'll say a string right here. John is, and then I'll put a space because it's not going to put a space automatically for us. And then we're going to put another parameter here. So basically just another thing. So here was our first thing, it was a string, and our second thing is going to be our variable. So I can either say John is 17, or I'll say John is age. Alright, and that sounds kind of weird, but it won't look weird to the console. So if I build and go, John is 17. Nice. This is very nice. Alright, well, this is pretty cool, but our programs aren't interactive. They actually just do nothing. All they do is spit things out to the console, and you can look at the console and say, oh, nice to know. Alright, John is 17. But let's make these programs more interactive. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to just leave this comment just so the way if you get kind of confused on what data type I'm using is, just look at this. But in the next tutorial, this won't be there. So learn to familiarize yourself with the data types. So first, also the code runs, as I said, from top to bottom, so you cannot use a variable until you declare it. So we're going to make a program that asks someone for their age and their, well, first of all, I'll make a program that asks them from their age, yeah. So, as I said, C out spits something out to the console. Now what I didn't tell you is C in actually takes the things in from the console, which means the user can now do stuff, and they're not just sitting there reading text. So first I'll say int space age semicolon, because, well, we're going to ask them for their age. So right now we don't know their age, so we cannot set it to a value. Then we're going to say C out, and then we'll say how old are you? And then we'll just put a new line so that way they're not oh, yeah, don't want two semicolons. So we'll put a new line so for them to enter text where they want. So now that we see something out to the console, we're going to want to read in their age. So we're going to console in, and then the brackets go the opposite direction if you're reading in. So it goes from the console into the program. So think of it as just arrows that go the way, I don't know, just think of it however you want, but that's the way the arrows work. So C in, and then the variable name that we're going to spit the data into. So we want the age, we're going to put the information, we're going to store the information they give us into the variable name age. So C in age, and then we'll say semicolon. And then now we know what, that's the same thing as saying int space age equals and then whatever they said. But that's great, but nice to know, but time to use that. Time to actually do something with that. So time for our next line of code, which we will say C out, and we'll say you are, and then we'll say space age. I forgot to put carrots here, don't make that mistake. So you are age, and there's a space here because it stored a number, it didn't store a string, it didn't, so it's just gonna, here it's just gonna display the number, nothing else. So if you want a space in between R and age, you're gonna put an extra space there. And I'm gonna go ahead and do an extra step. This is for the fancy people who are ahead of the game. and I'll say years old. And then what did I do? What did I mess up here? I needed another space in between. And then I'll say period. So as you can see, you can keep going on and keep adding things. So I'm going to add one more thing. And I'll say Andel. So this looks pretty complicated, but I'll break it down for you. So first we declare a variable that we're going to store their data called age. Then we ask them, we print out to the console the string how old are you, and then we print a new line. Then we read in from the console, and then we're going to store whatever we read in into the variable name age. Then we're going to read out the string you are, and then we're going to read out their age, or the variable name age, whatever, or read out the data that is stored in the variable name age. And then we're going to say another string, which is years old, and then we're going to print a new line. So if you go through it step by step, you'll see it shouldn't be that complicated. So I'm going to clear the log. We're going to run our program. Now the program stopped. It's not done. It needs input from the user. So I'm going to go ahead and say 17. And it says you are 17 years old. Now, before I end the video, hopefully I'm not making the video too long. I'm not really checking on the time. Alright, it's already pretty long. Alright, I realize I'm going pretty slowly, but hopefully I'm helping you. Alright, so now we're going to make our most advanced program yet. This is going to use more than one data type and more than one variable. So we'll say string space first name. Alright, and then we're going to make another string called last name. Alright, so now we have a first name and a last name, and then we're going to have a char or character for middle initial. I'll say middle int. Alright, now we'll say out to the console. And basically we're going to make a program that tells them their full name. So we'll say first, what is your first name? And then we'll give them a new line. And then we're going to read in, and we're going to read into the variable name first name. And here they're going to enter they'll enter not a number, they'll enter a chunk of text. So if you want, think about what they're going to enter. So when you declare the variable, because if they were to enter a number, then we wouldn't need a chunk of text. So C in first name. Alright. Then we'll see out another statement. See out what is your last name? And then we'll put an Andel statement right there, so it looks nice. And then we'll read in their last name into that variable, and then we're going to ask them what their middle initial is, which is a car. So this is going to be a new type of this is going to be a new data type that we're using. So we're going to say cout what is your middle, I'm going to spell this wrong, I guarantee you, I'll just say what is your middle int, because I don't want to be embarrassed all over the internet by spelling something wrong. Alright, so what is your middle int? Alright, and since I'm the user, obviously I know what I meant by that, but anyone else wouldn't, so learn how to spell, and don't be like me. Alright, so, and then we'll give them a new line, and just like any other data type, we're going to read it in the same, what am I doing? Alright, we're going to read it in the same way. So we read cin, console in, and then the name of our variable, middle int, semicolon. So now we know their first name, we know their last name, we know their middle initial. Time to tell them their full name. So we'll say cout space, and then we'll say, first we'll say hello, we'll greet them. Hello. And then we'll say, so first we're going to say their first name. So their first name is first name. And then we're not going to want all their names right next to each other. So we're going to say, we're going to have to put a space right there. So we can keep going and keep going, but the important thing is in between all things, we have to put these brackets. And I apologize that the video is getting long, but I don't like making videos in parts. So I'm going to have a 20-minute video or however long this is going to be. So first name, then we'll say middle initial. Then we're going to put the brackets again. And then we want a space in between their middle initial and last name. So we're going to put the quotes. And I'm actually going to put a period also, because most people put a period after their middle initial to abbreviate it. And then I'll say last name, and then I'll just end the line. So this looks like a pretty long line of code, but it's pretty simple. It's not that complicated, just doing a lot. It's telling them the string hello, then it's telling them their first name, then it's telling them the string spacebar, then it's telling them their middle initial, then it's telling them the string period spacebar, then it's telling them their last name. So now we're going to run this code. Hopefully we have no errors. I'm going to go into the console. What is your first name? John. I'll say, if it's asking me for my full name, I'll enter Jonathan. J-O-N-A-T-H-A-N. What is your last name? Loeb. What is your middle initial? So again, I can only enter one character. I'm going to make it a capital M. Alright. Hello, Jonathan M. Loeb. Well, hi, thanks to you. Thanks for greeting me. Alright, so hopefully now you get a better sense of what variables are and how to use them. In this tutorial, we've covered different data types, variable names, what data types, what information can be stored into them. We also talked about different ways of declaring variables, and we've also made two programs that use variables, and this one actually uses several different data types, and it prints it out, and we learn to read stuff in from the consoles to make interactive programs. So the video will end at about, wow, about 24 minutes. Sorry for such a long video, but we covered a lot of content. I didn't know how to make it very clear to beginners and make it a short video. Anyways, thanks for watching. If there's something you didn't fully understand, just shoot me a question, and I'll be glad to respond. Thanks for watching.